Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to the Best You podcast. My name is Nick Carrier, body optimization coach and creator of the 10-Week Transformation. The mission of the show is to help you get closer to your best you in all areas of your life every single day. In today's episode, we have Katie Van Arendonk. Katie is a marathon running coach who has run 30 marathons herself in 29 different states, and she's a mother of 4, 3 girls and 1 boy. During this episode, we're going to talk all about running. We get deep into the weeds to really give you some insight about how to train properly, whether you're training for a marathon or not. We're going to talk about how high your heart rate should be when you're training, how to divvy up your miles over the course of the week, how many high intensity miles, how many low intensity miles, what high and low intensity even mean. And then we also talk a little bit about how to navigate discussing body images and food topics with her teenage girls. For now, it's time to get closer to your best you. Let's dive in. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Best You podcast. Today, I am so excited to be joined by the one and only Katie Van Arendonk. Katie, I'm so pumped that you're joining me today. Thank you so much. Katie was my marathon training coach for the Nashville Marathon, my first attempt at a marathon, I should say, but most of you guys following the podcast know my experience with it. Unfortunately, I ended up having a stress fracture of my hip, but it's okay. I'm going to be back at it at some point, TBD, and I know that I'll be reaching out to Katie when that time comes. But today I'm really excited because I'm interested in talking about kind of you and your journey with running and motherhood and whatnot, because you've run, is it 29 marathons that you've run?
I think I've technically done 30, but I've crossed off 29 states.
Okay. 29 states, 30 total marathons. She has 4 kids. I think if I remember real correctly off the top of my mind, 15, 13, 12, and 10-year-olds. And so I know a lot of you guys listening are parents, and you're the type of people who are doing your best to prioritize health and fitness in your everyday life, but because you've got kids and got all the activities and stuff like that, it can make it more difficult. So that's actually where we're going to start today, and then we'll probably transition into some of the more specifics of running training and how to really go about it in the most strategic and effective way possible. But Katie, first question is basically, like you said, you've done 30 total marathons. So, and you have 4 kids, have had 4 kids over the last 15 years, if you will. How has your training evolved over the last 15 years? I mean, that can be running, that can be health and fitness in general. How has your training evolved? Because I think one of the things that I aim to do my best at coaching to my clients is that you should not get stuck into just this one definition of success with health and fitness, because your life is going to evolve and there's going to be seasons of your life where you have to change your weekly definition of success based off of the season of life that you're in. So talk to us kind of generally speaking. I know there's probably a lot over the last 15 years, but generally speaking, tell us how your training has evolved over the last 15 years.
Yeah, I think I've always been a firm believer that you need to have firm set goals, but really flexible plans. And I think being a runner since middle school and running through college competitively and then getting to grad school, it became more of like a hobby, and I took up marathon running. Once I added children into the mix, it became really crucial that, again, my success wasn't defined by running X number of miles or so many days per week. It just became, what's the volume that is sustainable for that season of life? And that might be really low volume. So early on, when I didn't have kids, I could run, a moderate volume of miles per week. And as soon as I had kids, I ran very low volume, like maybe 20 to 30 miles a week, because I was running 2 to 3 days a week, and then I'd cross train. And now that my kids, I can leave the house and leave them alone, I have the capacity to run high mileage. So I've done everything from walk run approach to running low volume, to running high volume, to running run fast to run slow. And I've done a ton of cross training just based on what fits into the schedule of my kids' days. So I'm maybe an atypical runner in that I do not have a set time of day that I run. I'm just confident and committed to doing the run in the window of time on a given day that presents itself to be the least inconvenient for everyone. It's probably the most inconvenient for me most of the time, because then it's the least inconvenient for other people that I have to be responsible for. But I think I've just committed to over different seasons and different demands, toddlers and infants versus middle school versus now I have a high schooler. Just being willing to be flexible. And again, like you said, redefine my definition of success. And it's not going to look like my neighbors or the countless people that I follow on Instagram that are either professional runners or sub-elite runners or recreational runners or even mother runners who have a better or more expansive support network. We've always lived away from family. So a lot of my running was with multiple children in strollers and somebody on a scooter and somebody on a bike. And so it's not efficient running. But I was like, miles matter, minutes matter. It doesn't matter what they look like. Some of the times it's just getting the job done. So I think being flexible with that definition goes a really long ways, especially when you parent motherhood or fatherhood into your fitness goals.
Totally. I mean, I love that, the idea of being, having goals but being flexible with your plans. I think that's absolutely critical, both so in execution wise, getting it done, but also mentally, it's really important to be flexible and know things that aren't going to be according to plan. What do you ever plan your week and schedule in particular runs? Is it like I schedule in some runs that I know I can get in, and then outside of that I have on my running clothes, or I have running clothes nearby so I know I can throw it on and get 30 minutes outside? Or like, how does that balance of plan versus actually no plan kind of look for you?
I feel like it's a both and. I do have a set plan for the week, but if I know, like, let's say for instance, tomorrow, I typically do my long runs on Fridays because my kids are in school, except for during the summertime.
Right.
But if I know, like, on this Friday, I will be driving from Wisconsin back to Ohio. So like my long run's not happening on a Friday. So then I preemptively, along with my coach, like we will shift and adjust. So like I'm still going to get the volume. I'm still going to get the executed plan accomplished, but I have to be flexible about, like, I'm not always going to get to do this run on this day, but if I can just shift. I do spend all of my life in athleisure wear. So like, I actually like showered and like put on people clothes for this. And it's funny because just yesterday I came downstairs literally in blue jeans and like just a plain black tank top. And all of my kids were like, why do you look so nice? I was like, well, because I'm not going running.
That's amazing. I love it. Yeah. Like you said, I think for most people, especially if they have multiple kids or just have like a super, super busy life, that is what is going to need to be done. It's like you plan what you can, but one of the things that I try to teach my people in my 10-week transformation class is to anticipate the like excuses or anticipate the challenges that you might have in your week, right? Because it's like, okay, I know that I'm getting ready to travel this weekend. I know that that's going to be a challenge, so I got to make sure that I plan accordingly and set myself up by getting my run in earlier in the week.
Yes. And I feel like I like that trickles down even to like my kids. I'm like, we're trying to set ourselves up and the people around us for success. And some of that looks like just controlling the controllable, have the things prepared that can be prepared to make the ease of execution. So there's fewer barriers to executing said objective or plan. And sometimes for me, like, and I can be an early morning person or I can be a late night person. It just depends on the day. And I am not opposed if I have to get on the treadmill at 11 p.m. because that was the window of time. Like, I will get on the treadmill at 11 p.m. Like, I'm not getting up at 5 a.m. the next morning. I'm going to sleep and get those 7.5, 8 hours of sleep. And then I'll kind of readjust. And so I think for me in parenthood, that became really critical because trying to plan, I learned really quickly with my first child, like trying to plan that like morning routine or like I'm going to work out before the kids get up. Like invariably, there's like a universal truth that like some kid's going to be up in the middle of the night. Somebody's going to be up in your bedroom before you needed them to be there, or somebody's going to get called into work and that plan's going to go out the window. So I feel like, again, being flexible with the goal, but also recognizing it requires you to be flexible in other areas of life too.
Yeah, totally. Just like honestly, practically speaking, you mentioned right before we hopped on how you have the 15, 13, 12, 10, and they're at that age where they're just not quite old enough to drive themselves, but they're old enough to be involved in a ton of activities and actual sporting stuff, actually traveling sporting events. Like, talk to us just practically some of the things that you do in order to keep it organized with regards to planning, with regards to like communicating with your husband to make sure we know who's doing what when, delegating to other parents who's driving. Like, what are some of the things that you guys do to get it done so that you can still have some time during the week for yourself and your own personal well-being?
Yeah, I was gonna say there is like that, come to Jesus meeting every week with my husband and I, like figuring out like who can drop off, who can pick up. We're pretty intentional about when we've moved a fair amount. And so looking for homes, schools, churches, activities, like the club sports that our kids, like we keep everything within a radius because we've always lived in a metroplex, right? And like you can easily waste time if you're driving from one end of the city to another. Like it might be 8 miles as the crow flies, but that's going to be 40 minutes in the car. So we do that strategically, try and like tell our kids like, hey, we want to support you and meet your energy and your goals where you're at, but here's the parameters. Like this is what's sustainable and executable for our family. So we do try to put limits on like how far are we traveling to play said sport, if it's a regular recurring practice.
Right.
I think the other thing is, you mentioned like just always having on your fitness clothes or bringing stuff with you. For both my husband and I, if we have to drop off a kid that's 20 minutes from home, like we're not going to go back home. Like we're going to grab our running shoes, we're going to grab a kettlebell, and just we're going to get our workout in while they're doing their soccer or they're doing their volleyball practice. And some of that is like, I am unabashedly shameless about working out in places where maybe other people would be like, that's weird. Like I spent a lot of time when our kids were littler, like the reward at the end of the run was stopping at the playground and they got to play. Like you got to scoot there, you got to bike there, you got to stay in the stroller until we get to point A. And then while they're free playing on the playground, I'm like, you can do push-ups, you can do pull-ups, you can do free hangs, you can do squats, you can do hamstring stuff with a swing. So just like being willing to be super creative and utilize that time. I think as my kids are older and I'm trying to embarrass them a tiny bit less, I mostly do a lot of like mobility work if I have that downtime and it's not worth going home. So like the stuff that tends to get pushed to the margin because I only have so much time to execute a run or a lift is, the mobility warm up, the prolonged stretching. So I'll sandwich that into, or even when I'm spectating at their sports and you're there for an all day tournament, I'm like, there's a lot you can do to benefit your body that is really easy to execute when you're with your kids.
Yeah. No, those are great. Those are great. I think that the strategy of making sure that the places that you're going recurringly every single week or multiple times a week or within a certain radius, having your clothes handy, having certain fitness equipment handy, and having the mindset that I know that if I'm going here, I'm not going to just sit there and be on my phone and waste time or having, like I'm going to actually use this time to be productive too. It could just be going a walk. Maybe it is, doing squats or finding a little playground or something like that to do it on. It's funny you mentioned that you're unabashedly shameless. My dad was kind of the same way. My sister and her friends, when she was young and playing soccer with travel soccer teams or whatever, they'd always make fun of him for like doing push-ups on the sideline. I mean, it's so true, right? Like anybody can do it. It just takes the willingness to actually do it. And it doesn't even necessarily take that much creativity. Like the more creative that you are, you might be able to get more out of your workout, but you can just literally like walk a little bit. There's always things that you can do by being prepared with having fitness clothes and potentially, like you said, maybe a kettlebell or dumbbells or a band or whatnot, or just doing stretches. Like there's so many ways you can get it in when there is technical downtime usually.
Yes, I was gonna say your dad and I might be secretly related. That's actually where I mastered push-ups is when my kids were all little and I spent so much time in public restrooms because like there's four of them and like one after the other. And so like I started doing wall push-ups and then I do the countertop push-ups and then I do the tricep variation. And then lo and behold, over the years, I was like, now I can do like standard push-ups and get out, multiple reps and multiple sets with good form. And it literally started in like the pool public restroom because I was like showering, like it just takes so much time. And we try to promote independence for our kids as young as possible, but that also comes with a time commitment because it's always faster for me to just do it quick. So it was like, how can I repurpose? Because I'm wired for efficiency. So I really value like, let's do the thing and let's do it well and let's do it right the first time so that we're not wasting time and going back. And that's a really hard sell as a parent because there's like children are just inefficient by nature because they're still learning everything.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you've done 30 marathons. I guess like without trying to make the question too complicated, why Do you just love it that much? What is your why behind doing all the marathons?
I mean, I've been running since middle school, and I think I started running because it's a sport that's probably the most inclusive and the most accessible, just across the board. Because like you go to your high school cross country team and your high school track team, like if you show up, you get to be a part of the team. Like you might not make a relay, you might not be running in regionals or districts or finals, but like you can participate. And on a whim, I ran my first marathon right out of the gate in grad school. Some of my new classmates at the University of Iowa were like, who wants to run the Chicago Marathon? And I naively was like, well, I guess I've been running my like entire childhood and young adult life. I'll do it. And I think it was like maybe an 8 week to 10 week lead up. It was not enough, but like we got it done. And I think I was hooked immediately. Like the energy that comes out of road race, the inclusivity that you see on the starting line, and like it's a corporate effort of people working towards a really hard goal. And it doesn't matter if you're the fastest person on the course or the slowest person on the course, like everybody's going the same distance and everybody's having to like battle through that like inner dialogue of like, this is terrible. This is so hard. I don't want to do this. Or why did I pay money to do this? Like this was the dumbest thing. But I'd say 99 out of 100 runners when they cross the finish line are like, feel so accomplished. So whatever they left behind them in the pain and the struggle, change them as a person on the other side. And then it's almost kind of like I jokingly, because I'm a mom, it's like childbirth. Like you forget about like the pain and struggle of actually like delivering a child into the world. And you're like, you know what? We should do that again. That was great.
That's
And
hilarious.
so I feel like there are just so many parallels between motherhood and marathoning. And as I became a mom, it became very much a moving meditation. Like it was the one kind of set time of the day where like things were relatively quiet, because even if I had a kid in a stroller, like sometimes they'd fall asleep or they'd eat a snack or they just are looking at a book. And so it became very calming and almost more of a mental health decision than a fitness decision, because science would support running is just universally good for your mental health, right? And it's good for your physical health. And
Do you listen to anything when you run?
for the longest time, I did not, because we lived in cities where it was probably not recommended for women running alone or with kids to have any type of AirPods. So I think I got my first set of like AirPods. I think I might have been 41, like 2 or 3 years ago. Like I haven't had them that long. So now I listen to audiobooks or podcasts. Sometimes music, but usually audiobooks.
Do you have like you said, you've done 29 states. What do you have a favorite marathon that you've done?
Burlington, Vermont, which is again a place I probably would have never gone to visit if I didn't have to just check off the state of Vermont. And at the time we lived in Maryland, so it was like an easy execution race. My parents lived in Connecticut, so they joined us. But Burlington is like this mid-major city tucked behind the mountains, and it has freshwater lakes, and it's just stunningly beautiful. And I just didn't anticipate it. And I was like, oh, I'm glad I came here. And they have really great maple syrup and Ben and Jerry's. So, I mean,
That's awesome. I'm sure that sounds amazing after a marathon. You had mentioned that you guys have moved a decent amount. I didn't exactly know that about you. I know that you used to live in Nashville, and I know that you currently live in Ohio. You just said you used to live in Maryland. When you move, what are some of the important things that you need to do? So what I'll provide a little bit more context. I think that anytime you change environments or you change a season of life that you're in, it's really important to form good habits right away. So one of the things that I just got married this past September, right? And so I knew that I wanted to be really intentional about forming good habits within our marriage right away, because if you do it right away, it becomes easier to sustain that moving forward. If you have bad habits right away, that just becomes the normal thing, and you do that moving forward. And then we moved into this house in December, and I was like, I know I want to make sure I have good habits right away when I move into this new environment, because whatever you do early on becomes normal and you're more likely to do it. So to now put the question on you, when you move to different cities, what do you feel like you've done well to make sure your healthy habits have not had any kind of lag time to get into the rhythm? Because I hear that from so many people. I moved cities, and then I didn't do anything after a few months, and so I never did anything. So talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think we have moved. I want to say this might be our sixth
Oh,
state
wow.
as a married couple that we've lived in. And I think one of the things that propels me to stay consistent is I find exploring new places on foot to be the most entertaining. And when I'm learning a new area, I am much more prone to know where I'm going if I've navigated it on foot than if I'm in
Hmm.
my car, because you kind of blindly follow GPSs. And so that is one thing that, I mean, I've definitely made some mistakes in that approach to exploring new cities when I like meet locals and they're like, "You ran where? Like, you should never run that route again. That was a terrible idea." Um, so I think one of that, and I think the biggest thing that the temptation exists, and this, even if you haven't moved cities or if you're just a new season, a new change, is to allow the change to dictate what's happening. And so I've never let kind of, or never is a strong word, I rarely let the demands of moving or relocating eliminate the value of like carving out, even if it's just 30 minutes of time to be active. And again, I've had to redefine what that looks like in some of those transition seasons. I mean, particularly case in point, moving from Wisconsin to Ohio just a couple years ago. My husband stayed in Wisconsin for several months because he had to finish out his contractual obligations. So I'm living in a hotel with four kids, trying to get them settled in a new school. Like, we don't really know anybody, but you know what a hotel has? It has a hotel gym. And
Yeah.
so, like, I can tap into that before the kids wake up or while they're getting showered and ready in the morning or when they're showering and getting ready at night. So I think it's just that unwavering commitment. Like, I'm going to get it done. It's probably not going to look like what I want it to look like, but something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And it's pretty rare that people regret putting in the effort. Like,
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I think I love what you said. I kind of wrote down how I think you can almost like think about it. Principally speaking, it's like don't let circumstances change how you live out your values. Just because you moved and you changed doesn't mean that I stopped prioritizing my health. It you know how you end up, what gym you go to or exactly your routine might look a little bit different, but don't let it change how you live out your values. I think that's great, and that was great insight. I want to kind of transition a little bit into some of the running questions. So I think as somebody who grew up in sports, and I played football and baseball all the way through, every sport growing up, but I played football and baseball all the way through, and most of the running we did was not as long distance. It was more sprints and things of that nature. And so I kind of grew up like a lot of people probably did, especially with maybe athlete backgrounds, is like always the harder you run, the better you're going to get. And the harder you run and the more you're going to get out of it. And then especially as you transition into just like adulthood generally, but also just longer distance runnings, and when you learn about the cardiorespiratory benefits of just like easier running, uh, it's really important to do that kind of stuff. And I think that you were one of the first people to explain that in a way that convinced me of the true importance of, if you want to call it zone 2 running, if you want to call it easy running, whatever it is. So talk to us about why actually doing some easy running or zone 2 running for most of what you're doing is actually the best way to do it, not just from all the different angles of consistency and longevity, but also like cardiorespiratory recovery, that kind of stuff.
yeah. And I think that's probably the conversation I have the most often when I onboard an athlete is, I can look at their data coming in and or just listen to their history from the intake form, and most everyone is generally just running their easy runs too fast.
Yep.
And I think it's because there's like this badge of honor of like, oh, well, I run 5 miles in 45 minutes, or I run 5 miles in 40 minutes, or it's like that's the window of time and they're committed to 5 miles. So they'll just run as fast as they need to get it done in the allotted time. And our body, I tend to reiterate, like, our body doesn't know pace and it doesn't know distance. It just simply knows stress and duration. So it knows how hard am I working and how long do I have to do it. And that gives you this freedom where your easy pace or your zone 2 or however you want to label it, is really just like, it literally needs to feel easy. And so the guidelines I typically give my runners is, if you can't have a full conversation, or if somebody's trying to talk to you and you're annoyed that they want you to talk, that's like your number one like red flag. I'm like, I'm working too hard. So I'm like not really following the intention of today's workout if I'm working that hard. because we want to train the systems that allow us to run. And for a distance runner, 98, 99% of that race is built on your aerobic capacity, which is your engine. So your heart and your lungs. How efficiently can they pump blood to the periphery and get it back and just keep doing that on repeat, right? And so that easy run is what builds that aspect of your fitness. I mean, mitochondrial density, your ability of the efficiency of your heart rate, kind of just building that oxygen exchange process in the respiratory system. But if you're running too hard, then you tap into and your heart rate's beating too fast. So then you kind of are shifting to a different fuel source and a different scientific execution of the run. And so the general rule I think that you can easily find out there is like the 80-20. Like 80% of your running should be easy, 20% should be hard. And I think like getting stuck in that gray area of running your easies too hard doesn't allow you to run your hard workouts hard. So then you really just end up, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Because then when it's time to go hard, you've kind of depleted the energy source and the supply, and the recovery process isn't the same because you went too hard on your recovery day. Then when it's time to go hard, you're not going to hit those paces. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of like, well, I'm not hitting my paces. So now I'm frustrated. So what must be wrong? So let me just dial in and work even harder. And so it gives you that freedom to know easy is easy. And you like, for me, my easy pace range is like today, the dew point in Ohio is 70 and it's like 82 degrees. It's like it's like swimming outside.
Yeah.
And so my easy pace is going to be upwards of like 9:30 to 10. But if it's like 50, I can like 7:30 is going to feel amazing. And so like that's a 3-minute swing, and kind of recognizing there's other factors that impact what easy feels like. Did you get good sleep? When's the last time you ate? Are you in a marital spat? Do you have like an exam coming up? Because our body just knows stress. It's not going to delineate like emotional stress from spiritual stress, from physical stress. It's just like stress is stress. And so we need to respect that aspect that factors into running performance and execution.
Yeah, that's great. When you originally you said our body doesn't know pace and what was the second thing again? A pace and distance, but it does know stress and duration. That's great. I mean, I think that really taking that to heart is absolutely critical, because then what you just said with regards to sometimes my easy running days are going to be at a different pace because of the different environmental factors or the amount of sleep that I've gotten or what I've eaten or what's going on in my personal life. And so when you run to a particular level of exertion, a particular level of stress feeling, then and you let that be your barometer, you let that be your compass, then you can allow yourself to, speed up if you're feeling great, slow down if you're not feeling great, and you can truly let that be your guiding tool when you're going out and running.
Yeah, and as I've coached middle school track in Wisconsin, and then I help out the middle school and high school here. I also like learning that early and practicing it allows you as an athlete to recognize your own pace, right? So when you tell a kid to go out and run, like I want you to run, 80%, 90% of your max effort, that can be a little bit arbitrary and hard and nuanced. But if I'm like, hey, I want you to run hard enough that you can say one word to your neighbor, like go or quit or tired, like then they have a sense of like, oh, that's how hard I should be working. Versus if I send them out and I was like, you should be able to talk the entire time. And if that means you need to slow it down, slow it down. If it means you can speed it up and continue conversing, great. Then when they get into race pace, I think they have a better feeling of like, oh, I've been here before. My body, it's like you can find that autopilot a little bit easier because you've learned to listen to your body.
Totally. Totally. Now this is going to be, let's talk. I'm going to ask this question from the angle of somebody that's not training for a marathon or anything like that, or training for any particular race. They're kind of just running to run. They might run like maybe a total of 20 to 30 miles a week. how you mentioned before the very simple ratio of 80-20, of 80% of those miles being maybe zone 2 or easy runs and 20% of those miles being a little bit harder. How do you think about like trying to get maybe a little bit more nuanced than that? And maybe you only get more nuanced if you are actually training for a race. So maybe that is where we need to take the conversation. But when I was training for the marathon, a lot of them were easy runs. Then there were some race pace runs. There was some in between that. There was some faster than race pace runs. How do you kind of think about how you divvy up the mileage with per like level of intensity, I guess?
Sure. I feel like generally speaking, you're going to have like your threshold runs, which are going to be like your 10K ish pace. And those, like, theoretically, you want to be able to hold that pace for 40 to 60 minutes eventually. But that's where you have to like break it down into increments and allow yourself the ability to rest in between as you build that up. And then you look at your interval or repetition, like your faster reps. And that's where you're really just trying to train the anaerobic system. So you're going to be running at a much harder effort, but you're going to get a much longer recovery. So that every time you toe the line, you're going to hit that faster pace. That's either, I mean, if you're a marathon runner, it's probably going to be closer to like your mile pace or maybe a little bit faster. So, I mean, yes, it's nuanced in like, are you running for a distance or are you running for a shorter race? But I think the easiest low hanging fruit for your amateur, weekend warrior runner who wants to get better at running, I would say simply adding in strides at the end of your easy run goes a really long ways for improving running economy. So like how efficient you are at running, because a lot of times what happens as we run easy and slow is the efficiency of our form gets less efficient. Like you kind of feel like you're slogging through a slow run sometimes. And when you add in those strides, which are, 20-second efforts, you're probably going to cover 80 to 120 meters, depending on how fast you are. But those strides help improve your knee drive, your heel recovery, your like long torso, your arm carriage. And they're short bouts of effort with a full recovery. So if you're running 20 seconds on, you got a full 60 seconds to walk, stand, recover before you toe the line again and try it again. But I think that's the easiest thing to add in if you are not training for a race or you're not looking to train for a race. It's not traditional HIIT. It's so don't think of it in that capacity, but it's just the benefits of the muscles that you're training and the neuromuscular like memory pattern that then when you get to your easy runs, your body's like, oh, there's an efficient way to do this. Like, let's move kind of to the forefoot and let's cycle our legs a little bit faster. So we get that cadence up so that we're having like a tight spring is a responsive spring. So you can kind of pop off the ground a little bit better.
Yeah. No, I loved adding in those strides at the end. Like you said, it's you're running fast, but it's for a very short period of time, so it's not really that tiring. It's just like you said, you have the ability to really focus for that short period of time on all those things that you mentioned, on knee drive, on posture, on quick turnover of your feet, and that could be huge.
And I mean, I have an athlete she's in her early 70s. I'm like, just think of it like a foot race when you were a kid. Like we're just racing from this light post to the next one, who's getting there fastest. Yeah. And then when you get to the light post, like then you stop and you turn around, rest, and you do it again. So I think it also just imbues like a little bit of that like childhood like joy of like, oh, do your shoes make you run fast? Yes, today they do. They do make you run fast.
That's awesome. How do you think about, I kind of want to ask it from the standpoint of maybe running performance to begin with. So strength training for running, I would think, something that's just kind of coming to the top of my head. When you think about strength training for running, you can think about strength training for durability and like kind of like injury prevention type stuff. But then you can also think of, and just kind of like longevity. But then maybe there's also strength training for running with regards to performance and actually getting you potentially the ability to run more efficient or run faster. Are there things that you think about with regards to resistance training or power training exercises in order to do that, in order to actually become like a faster runner?
Yeah, I mean, I think for runners, I kind of wish I still lived in Nashville so I could come to your Best You class, because I think like a lot of what you incorporate there is the squat, the hinge, the lunge, the push pull, and the carry. Like those 5 elements I think are really valuable for helping runners become faster and prehab. So like let's get ahead of the game so that we're not dealing with anterior knee pain or anterior hip pain or shin splints, either posterior lateral or anterior medial. There's a lot of things that you can be proactive about. I think the thing for runners specifically is it really needs to be mindful of single leg efforts and the eccentric loading. So running is essentially just a repeating eccentric squat and then unload, and then it's eccentric single leg squat to eccentric single leg squat. And those are really hard lifts to do in the gym because they're very humbling. Because it's a lot easier to squat or hinge or deadlift really heavy weights when you have both feet on the ground or when you can push through both feet. But running is by definition a single leg activity. So I think if you want to get faster as a runner, like you need to do the rear foot elevated squats, and you need to do like the rear, like the front foot elevated, and the single leg hinges. And really, I think for runners in general, I don't know if this is universal, but like we tend to be a little bit anterior dominated. So quad dominant, hip flexor dominant. So anything to train the posterior chain. Those hamstrings, isometrics, I think are really helpful for the gastroc and the soleus. So yeah, I'd say if I had to come down to 2 exercises that runners should do to get faster, it'd be single leg eccentric squats and soleus work. So we do a lot of calf raises, but like isolating the soleus, which is, the white meat, unsung hero of the ankle complex, it is never, I want to say most muscle energy graphs show like it is never not working in the entire gait cycle. Like it is always active, even on the swing phase, because you need to dorsiflex your foot and pull your toes up during that knee drive. Like we're looking for triple flexion, triple extension in running. And that triple flexion, that last flexion is that dorsiflexion. So you're eccentrically using the soleus and the gastroc, even in the swing phase, right? To hold that dorsiflex position.
And correct me if I'm wrong, basically the soleus is the part of the calf muscle that you are targeting more specifically if you're doing like a bent knee calf raise. Is that correct?
So it just crosses a single joint, right? So the gastroc crosses the back of the knee. The soleus does not. They're both hugely powerful. But yeah, I tend to like, if I'm explaining it, I'm like the soleus, like the gastroc makes you run fast, jump high, look super athletic. The soleus, like you're not going to tip over. You can cut side to side. You can just keep on going like the Energizer Bunny. Like that's its role. So together they're a dynamic duo, but the soleus tends to get overlooked in general, just in all strength training, because calf raises are just less awkward to do with your knee straight.
Yeah, totally. I love it. The single, unilateral exercises, no doubt, like you said, and it's very easy to understand when you just actually realize that running is a single leg exercise over and over and over and over and over again. When you're running, your feet are never on the ground at the same time. That's what distinguishes running from like the power walking in the Olympics and stuff like that. So
to be clear, those power walkers in the Olympics, like they're walking like a 6-something mile.
It's insane.
So fast.
It's insane.
I'm like, but how? Make it make sense.
It's insane. On the topic of kind of like strength training from runners, there's a lot of people who just believe that running is bad for your body. When somebody says that to you, what do you say?
I'd say if that's like the body follows where the mind leads. So if you have told yourself in your mind that running is bad for you, then why, yes, you have already decided. Yeah. So I think some of like getting into running, and even as I have young kids and I'm doing this running club this summer, they're like, I hate running. I'm like, well, of course you do, because you already decided that you hated it. So like just remaining curious and open to like, everything is supposed to be hard. Like you should be bad at something when you start it. And so another kind of training philosophy that I use is like start where you stand. So like if running is new to you, then you should be really prepared to be bad at it. Like it should be hard. As my kids play guitar, and I was like, you didn't like guitar at the beginning either, because you didn't know where to put your fingers and you didn't know how to like strum. And I don't play guitar, but like if I tried, I'd be super frustrated and I'd be like, this is dumb. I'm not trying it anymore because it's hard. Yeah. And so I think they kind of mislabel what it is. It's not bad for you. It's just hard. And it's going to be hard until you've put in the work and the time to get better at it, which is true of pretty much everything in life, including marriage and parenting and
Yeah.
I don't know, you own a business. It sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah. 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 It sucks.
Yeah,
No,
so
just kidding.
there are days where you're like, this was a terrible idea
Yeah. 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 No, it's,
to do this.
yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's great. But yes, it's very, very hard and it has become more and more, rewarding the more I slowly get a grasp on things. To kind of somewhat stick on the topic, I kind of feel like everybody, obviously some people are going to be naturally better at running for a lot of different reasons, maybe their body type or their genetics and stuff like that, so there's no doubt about that. And I also kind of feel like, I don't really know the science of this, but I also feel like there's probably some skeletal structure things that predispose certain people to injury, maybe more likelihood than somebody else. There might be feet and ankle things, knee things, hip things that cause people to be a little bit out of alignment and can cause. Do you know of, like, are there specific things that if somebody is like thinking about wanting to run more, they should look for as far as imbalances before going all in and set it to make sure that they prevent injury or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like even if you just look at like some of those post rehab protocols or post operative protocols, a lot of those are kind of designed to look for those things. And
Mm,
one of them is like the single like hop test. Like, can you hop on one foot?
mm,
Like for a duration of time, or even I think one of another standardized test that people use is like the number of calf raises you can do in a certain duration of time. So there are kind of those like litmus checkpoints where you can be like, hey, like we've identified some areas that are going to make running a little bit more challenging. So if we just hone in here, you will be set up better for success. Not that it's going to be easy, but you're just going to have a better strategy going forward. And I do think that body awareness of like, yeah, do you have really aggressively like rotated femurs or tibial torsion, or you have like functionally flat feet versus actual flat feet? Knowing that about your body can help you accommodate it appropriately. Like, do you need a running shoe that has a midsole insert, or do you need to buy a custom orthotic or an off the shelf? Which, I mean, I think the Superfeet off the shelf orthotics are great if you are somebody who has, you know, typically it gets labeled as overpronation, but a lot of times when I'm watching runners, it's not necessarily that you're overpronating or undersupinating. That's true in some super rigid foots and some super flexible foots, but a lot of times in the recreational runner, it's just the rate at which your body is doing that activity. And it's because the muscles that are controlling it eccentrically just don't know what their job is. Like they just
mm.
haven't been brought on board to be like, hey, posterior tibialis, this is your job during this part of the gait cycle. And it's like, yeah, that's a lot of work. I'm just going to collapse because that's way easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I do think that there are some like screening tests that can definitely, if you identify them early, can help you accommodate them more accurately as you
Yeah.
move forward.
Totally. I do, and I do think that is, it's hard to know like the percentage of people who say like running is bad for your body because I got injured when I did it. Because, when I got injured, my response isn't, yeah, running is bad for my body. My response is like, okay, maybe I could have done something, or maybe there was some mobility thing or some, I don't know. I was like trying to be curious as to different things that I could have done rather than like running is bad for my body. And I think there's a lot of people who don't do, whether specific screening, or they don't get the right shoes, or they can't hop on one foot at the time, and then they get into running and they get hurt because they weren't even prepared to run in the first place. And somebody actually said it to me a couple weeks ago that, running is hard, and some people think I'm going to start running to get in shape, but you almost need to get in shape before you start running. And I thought that was really such a good thing to say, and it came to mind because the single leg hop, I know there's plenty of people who cannot do that. Like I've coached clients who very much struggle to hop on one foot. And so those are also certain people who don't really know how to do strength training at all, or don't really know anything else with regards to fitness. And so they think I need to get in shape, so I'm going to start running. And then you set yourself up for failure because you can't even hop on one foot.
Yes, yes. And I mean, even like I have a lot of like, there are young high school athletes, and like even balance. Like I feel like people don't realize like single legs activity is there's a lot of balance involved in running, and you'll see a lot of runners who will like kind of run like they're on a
Yeah, straight line. Yeah.
right. And so like, and I think athletes who play soccer or sport where like you are chasing a ball, like basketball, they tend, and a sport where you have to cut a lot, like they naturally tend to do that. And so then you have these super fit kids coming from one sport and then they're going to run track. And they're often the kids who end up with shin splints or anterior knee pain or some type of hip pain or hip bursitis. And then you watch them run and it's like, well, no wonder, because you're running on a balance beam and that's your foot's not under your center of mass, so then everything has to compensate. And so yeah, the single leg hop test, or even just your ability, like can you do single leg calf raises, even like can you
Right.
do a single leg calf raise continuously for 30 seconds? Like that's a burner, and it'll be a
That's
really
hard.
like, truth tell. It is way harder than people think.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. If somebody just because out of my own curiosity, if somebody does have that kind of stride where they're just running one foot in front of the other and there's no width, if you will, from one foot landing to the other foot landing, is that something that they can correct? Because like running form, I feel like is one of those things that can be corrected, but it's really hard. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of focus because it's something that you've done forever.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some success. So like with the kid, it's going to require like a visual cue. So
Yeah.
having them run like on the lane of the track, and like,
Mm,
your feet have to stay on touching
either.
the outer edge of both. Or a lot of times we have a turf field available. So similarly, my treadmill downstairs, if I do a gait analysis on there, my treadmill just happens to have a red line in the center,
Mm,
which is helpful for analysis because it's really easy to tell, like, oh yeah, you're a scissor, you're scissoring, right? And so
yeah.
it's no wonder that that hip is bothering you because you only scissor on one side.
Yeah.
Um, I think that coming back to then earlier we talked about cadence, is I feel a lot of recreational runners, myself included, and I ran competitively, you always hear this term stride out, right? And so in your natural inclination is to reach that foot way out in front of you and like kind of claw the earth and like pull yourself forward. Whereas what we really want is that foot to land right underneath our center of mass and propel us forward rather than drag us forward. And
Totally.
so I think even just a simple way for runners who are wanting to elevate, their running and feel quicker and more accomplished and less tired is just you're being aware of your cadence. Like how many steps are you taking per minute? I mean, the magic number out there is always 180 gets thrown out, and it's relative, right? Like
Yeah.
how long are your legs? What's your body habitus? Like there's other variables that are going to inform that. But generally speaking, it's going to be a lot quicker than what you think it should be.
Yeah.
Because the less time your foot spends on the ground, so that ground reaction time, we want it to be super short. So not only is running a single leg activity, it's almost like you spend like 95% of the time in the air. Like you're on the ground for milliseconds, what you're looking for, like that really quick foot contact.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's where the strides also come in handy because it teaches you that quicker cadence. Because you
Totally.
can still have a really quick cadence and run slow. Like they're not mutually exclusive.
Right. Right. Just so the stride length is just very little.
Exactly.
Well,
You're not gonna, your heel recovery is lower. And so there's other variables that are gonna like slow you down versus propel you forward. One
totally.
being like that lean from the ankles, right?
I am very much kind of like that prototypical person who played sports my entire life and then transitioned into running and had all of these things wrong when I first started, right? Like my same thing, my cadence. I don't know exactly what my cadence was before, but I've gotten it to its low 170s or mid 170s or I don't, it's been a while since I've looked at it. But is there anything that you can do to increase your cadence? Like if let's say somebody's cadence, again, I'm not the running coach, so I don't know exactly where people start, but let's say somebody starts at 150 and they're trying to slow it down to 160 or something like that. Is it just a matter of mindfulness of trying to take shorter strides, or is there anything else besides just mindfulness and focusing on it that can help improve that?
Yeah, I think the cue that I've had the most success with younger athletes is quick and quiet feet. So like when
Mm,
their feet are hitting the ground, which is easier to tell in the gym when I'm like coaching volleyball or doing conditioning, like quick and quiet feet, because it's really hard to have have quick feet if your steps are heavy.
Yeah.
And so if they just learn, and generally speaking, if you take kids out of their shoes, which they are like morally opposed to showing you their feet at this current stage in life, which is unfortunate because feet are amazing and they're, the foundation of running. The second you take people out of a shoe, they will automatically shift towards kind of the forefoot as their landing spot on their foot. And I don't really spend a lot of time harping on initial contact, like, are you a heel striker or a forefoot striker or a midfoot striker or a toe striker? I'm more concerned about where is it landing relative to your center of mass. So I kind of tackle cadence first, because if we can get that cadence up, odds are pretty good that that foot's going to stop landing out in front of you and then having to pull you forward.
Right. So when you said that, just to clarify for everybody listening, she said, I'm most concerned with where your foot is landing with perspective of, or in comparison to your center of mass. Basically, you want your foot landing, striking the ground right underneath you.
Yeah, relatively very close to your pelvis.
Okay. And oftentimes the most common error is people landing out in front of them. You're saying, correct?
Yep. And when you're reaching out in front of you, you tend to be landing on your heel, which is a braking force to the ground reaction, right? Because for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And you want that equal and opposite reaction to be coming straight up versus pushing you backwards. So it's almost like, not only does it put you at risk for, a host of overuse injuries, but it also, like, it's actually just slowing you down. And so that, I think, is one easy. And I often put on, you can put on a playlist on Spotify and be like 180 beats per minute music. And like, you just stay with the tempo. Or if you've been on any type of Peloton or ride, like, they're always talking about your cadence and spinning. It's similar, right? Like, they're training different systems by having you cycle faster. And so I actually think spinning is a really good way to work on running cadence, because if you're clipped in, you're working on that pull up. So you're getting that hip flexor work and that hamstring work. So it's kind of a both and, that coordination, because when your knee drive is the coordination of the hamstring and hip flexor too. So I think a really easy, accessible way for people, if they're entering running, to work on cadence is get on a spin bike and spin fast. And like 100 is equivalent of like roughly 200 beats per minute running versus 100 revolutions, right? So if you just double that number roughly, then you can kind of mimic that running cadence.
Totally. Maybe a couple more things. I don't want to take too long, but I'm just fascinated. So I find it fascinating that oftentimes if you take your shoes off and you go barefoot, you almost can kind of self-correct certain bad habits with running. And it kind of, when you said quick and quiet feet is the cue, when you go barefoot, you don't have the cushion. And so you don't want to land at you don't necessarily consciously think about this, but you're probably kind of thinking like, I don't want to land too heavy because I've got no cushion underneath my feet. So I need to stay, quick and quiet on my feet if I'm doing barefoot. Do you have make any sort of emphasis with yourself to walk barefoot around the house? Like, do you think there's an importance to that, of doing things more barefoot? I know you already talked about how you love feet, so I'm just
yes. Well, my family would probably be like, of course she's going to talk about toe yoga, because I really do think the foot is the foundation, and there's a lot of things that can improve up the chain, because everything changes once the foot hits the ground, right? Like, all the mechanics go kind of in reverse, and so everything kind of has to control in the opposite direction of what it would when your foot's swinging through the air. But I'm very intentional. Like, we don't wear shoes in our house because I do not want to clean up after that. And I'm like, that's one easy way to make my life a little more sustainable with 4 kids. All the shoes stay in the garage. And I also, are they called toe? I have a Toe Pro, which is kind of like, it's just a glorified foam wedge, but it has some ridges on it. That's really great for isolating different ankle complex muscles and kind of upgrading your calf exercise routine. And then correct toes, which there's a whole host of different ones on the market. Toe separators, right? Like, I tend to wear those when I can. I have a few pairs of shoes that would accommodate them as well. I also, when I have athletes, like, I'm always going to advocate for a wide toe box on your shoe over a narrow. One, because like the function of the foot, again, when you take the shoe off, it allows the foot to do the job that it's designed to do, which is, it's going to absorb shock on the landing, and that's our pronation. And then as we roll through our foot, it's going to become a rigid lever, and it's going to supinate so that we can push off. And when you put it in a shoe, your foot just has the ability to be dumb. Like it just doesn't have to do as much work because it has materials that are going to help support that activity without the foot having to be as engaged as it would otherwise. And that wide toe box really allows those feet to splay. And I tell kids when I'm coaching them, it's like when you're doing push-ups, like you would never do push-ups with Barbie hands, right? Like you are going to spread your hands as far as you can to grip the earth so that you can push away the most efficiently. Your feet function the exact same way. So like they are splaying to create a really wide base of support, wide being relative, obviously. But that is allowing it to absorb that ground reaction. And then as you come through leaning over that foot, you get that rigid lever, but it has a wide base. Sorry if I have my hand here. It has that wide base to push off of. And so you have a tight spring is a responsive spring. So if we have a wide, taut spring, it's going to get free energy from all that tendon elasticity. And then running becomes a little bit more enjoyable because you're utilizing the free energy of physics, which I hated physics in undergrad, but then I got to grad school and I was like, but I love kinesiology because we applied physics to something that I'm interested in.
Nice. Correct toes. My toes suck. My toes, I can't move my toes at all. Like I'm that embarrassing person if like, everybody for whatever reason, I don't know. I feel like I've done this with a few people. Like your shoes are off and like some people can just spread their toes upon cue and I look at them and try my damnedest to move my toes and they won't move.
Yes. Yep. And so like that ability, or even like the hardest one I think to train is that ability to like lift the big toe separate from the little.
Oh, I'm not even, there's no chance in me doing that.
And sometimes that literally starts with just passively, like we lift the big toe and then we see if we can just hold it there and let it go down. And then we lift the little toes passively, hold them there and let them go down. And like, again, that's neuromuscular re-education for those muscles are designed for those specific activities, but like shoes don't require it of them. So then like, it's like learned helplessness, right? Like if I always do everything for my kids, it's no wonder they can't do the thing because I have conditioned them to not do the thing because I'm always doing it for them, which is kind of how our body works. Like it's always going to pick the path of least resistance, whether it's because of pain or lack of mobility or, discomfort or whatever. It's going to find a way to accomplish the task, but
I love the analogy. Kids are like toes. You can't do everything for them. Or they're going to become dumb. That's hilarious. Last little topic I want to cover is kind of like a little bit nutrition and running and stuff like that. And I think the way that I want to end the conversation is how do you change up your nutrition? How does your nutrition look different when, let's say, you're in the thick of marathon training, 4 or 5 weeks out or something like that, when you're really in the thick of it and maybe your mileage is the highest that it might be compared to when you're just doing typical, not training, the 20 to the 25, whatever mileage is. Yeah.
I mean, one is I'm much more intentional about time to nutrition when I'm in a training block. So I'm going to be super intentional to get those 2 servings of carbs, 1 serving of protein, 30 to 60 minutes before I run. If my run is longer than 75 minutes, I will supplement with some type of energy during the run, which is typically just once a week. If I'm in marathon training, it's the long run, right?
And you said 2 servings of carbs, 1 serving of protein, 30 to 60 minutes before, if it's just a typical run. Is that what you said?
Yep. Okay. I try and do that before every run. Like I'm not a big proponent of running fasted or running on empty. Like one, that's not great for your stress hormones. 2, it's not great for muscle recovery afterwards because you're just running on empty from the start.
Do you let's say, and I want to get to the longer run for sure in a second, but if you're running, I don't know, do you ever do morning runs? Like, do you think that even if you're running an hour after you wake up, do you still usually try to put something into your body beforehand, even if you're not like hungry or whatever?
If I'm morning running, I'm pretty lazy. Like I will be eating my carbs as I am putting on my shoes. Like I won't get the whole 30 to 60 minutes. It'll be like 5, 10. but like I'm going to eat a simple carb that I know I have trained my gut to tolerate. So graham crackers, granola bars, saltines, Ritz, like pretzels, and like there's got to be something on board for your body to use some type of fuel system, right?
Totally. And when you say two, just to give everybody some specifics, some numbers if they want to jot it down. When you say 2 servings of carbs and 1 serving of protein for you and your body type and everything like that, what does that kind of look like for you gram wise?
Gram wise, I mean, it's usually like a bagel, which is going to be, like 40-ish grams of carbs. It was peanut butter, and then I drizzle some honey and cinnamon on it, or it's a banana with peanut butter, or like a piece of fruit with a handful of nuts. Like I don't weigh things. I don't measure things.
Yeah.
Good concept of like, my protein serving needs to be about the size of my palm. Like,
Yeah. So like you said, maybe around 40 grams. I mean, like you said, you're not maniacal about the specificity of it, but it's probably maybe anywhere from 30 to 50 grams of carbs, maybe, and then protein wise, it might be anywhere from 5 to 20, 10 to 20, something like that.
yeah, it's pretty minimal from the protein standpoint on the front end, but then I am very much more diligent about getting that like 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of finishing my workouts. Mostly because I feel like I'm in good company. Getting the amount of protein I need as an athlete can feel like a full-time job, because if you're roughly aiming for that 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, like I am not a light runner. I'm not a wisp of a runner. Like I'm like, that is a lot of protein. So I tend to, chocolate milk is like a really easy go-to, cheese sticks, meat sticks, anything that I can like transport with me. Cause I'm usually, that margin of time is like those 30 minutes after I'm finishing a workout, I am probably going to pick up a child. So it needs to be transportable fuel, whether a smoothie or, my daughter's way into making these protein balls, which are fantastic, but she kind of hoards them because they're a lot of work to make. And so then she's like very like observant as to who eats how many.
Totally. That's great. That's great. So that's pre-run, that's post-run. I guess for just really quickly for the longer runs, is basically you usually do the same thing and just fuel within the longer run as well.
Yeah. So I typically, I go by minutes because I'm not like my pace is not consistent enough to be like I'm going to fuel every 5K or every whatever, because like the time it takes me to do those miles is going to shift based on the elements and other variables. So kind of my rule of thumb going out is every 30 minutes I'm going to aim for 40 to 60 grams of carbs and like 4 to 8 ounces of water. Or an electrolyte of some type. I am a very heavy sweater, so I am now finally kind of playing around with taking in salt tabs, because the amount of sodium I'm losing, it typically doesn't bother me when I'm running. It's typically the post run where I'm like, I have that perpetual headache. I have some GI issues post run. And I'm like, it's because I've lost so much sodium and so much fluid from running and sweating. So I'm trying to be a little bit more proactive on incorporating a higher sodium concentration in what I consume. But I feel like that's very athlete specific. And I'm just a very, very sweaty runner.
Totally. Okay. Gotcha. You got time for one more question? I forgot. Sweet. I had wanted to talk about this more in kind of or I know I want to talk about this when we were discussing personal stuff. So, as somebody who's very health and fitness minded, and so is my wife, we want to ensure that obviously we pass on the values of health and fitness to our kids as well, but like not in a manner in which we're like shoving it down their throats and make them feel bad if they're not like super into it or whatnot. And like I feel like nowadays so many kids also get so caught up in having a negative relationship with body image and stuff like that. So kind of a very generic question, open-ended. You can kind of take it where you want it, but how do you feel like you either discuss health and fitness or body image around your house, or how do you think about ways to be intentional about like passing on the values of health and fitness without leading to a potentially negative relationship with the topic?
Yeah, I think there is a huge element of like lead by example. Like kids pick up more by what they see than what they hear.
Yeah.
And both my husband and I have been athletes our whole lives. But we also just generally choose to be active as a family. So like the activities that we are going to pursue when we are just hanging out as a family are typically geared around biking, swimming, hiking, yard games, lawn work. Like, there's some type of movement involved. Um, I think having 3 girls out of the gate, I think body image is like a huge component. And so as an individual and as a female and as a mom, like I don't ever speak negatively about my body habitus, and my girls are built very similar to me, and we're quite like just muscular by nature, like very athletic builds, which can make shopping for female clothes a bit of a struggle. And so I think that narrative of like, yeah, like you have strong quads, which is why you can have the vertical that you have to play volleyball. And that is why you can run the time that you currently run in the 400 and in the 200. So kind of reframing those thoughts, because they're inevitable. Like everybody's going to have them. They are like part of human nature to be hypercritical. Um, and so learning to reframe that for them in real time conversations. And as far as food goes, like we've always just been, my kids from the time they were super little, like our meals are super basic. They are not fancy, but like we are always like, is there a vegetable? Is there a fruit? Is there a grain? Is there a protein? And is there a healthy fat, whether that's cheese or avocado or oils or whatever, nuts, like what are we adding in? And as they are now like very active athletes, I'm very pro like get your protein. Like I don't care which protein you're choosing, but like you need to scramble some eggs, you need to make a sandwich, you need to get a protein drink out of the fridge. Just helping them recognize like this is the fuel that your body needs to do the things that you want it to do. And we also are like very big on desserts. Like, so there's no shame around, like, there's no one food that we're like, oh, we don't eat that.
Yeah.
And I'm also, my husband and I, we are Dutch by like, extension by family, and Dutch people make really good pastries and really good desserts. And I'm like, if I'm going to eat dessert, like I'm eating the really good dessert. Like I'm not eating this imitation option over here that's made with things that I don't appeal to me. Like I want the butter, I want the sugar, and I'm just going to eat a sane and reasonable portion. So we've always just like, dessert's great. Just eat a sane and reasonable portion and move on. And I think all of our kids are very good at now just self-regulating. Like they are aware, like it's always available, but they are very just naturally, like it's never been prohibited. So it isn't anything that they feel like they need to go to the other extreme,
Yeah.
consume in mass amounts. And even on holidays, like whether it's Halloween is probably the most one. I have one daughter who like her body like legitimately just does not like a lot of sugar. Like she feels terrible. And so she had one hit wonder. I think she was probably like 10 at the time. And she's like, I feel terrible. And I'm like, well, how much candy did you eat? And she showed me, I was like, that's why. I was like, now you know, like you like candy, but you don't like it that much.
Yeah. That's almost like I kind of wish I had that. Like it'd be so much easier to just say like, no, I don't want the extra sugar, because I know I'm gonna feel like crap after. Well, I mean, most of the time I do feel like crap afterwards.
Well, I mean, she's the one out of four. So she's really the only one who's like, she won't eat chocolate. She doesn't really like frosting. I was like, well, you're kind of missing out there, but she likes
Yeah.
ice cream.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, this has been great. This has been an absolute blast. We've covered a lot of territory here in this past hour 15 or whatnot. Hopefully you guys took down some good notes on how to manage your time in an appropriate manner so that you can continue to prioritize your own health and fitness amidst the chaoticness and busyness of your life. It's not a matter of not having time. It's a matter of not making it a priority enough. And so get creative, figure out a way to get it done. I love the idea of, if you bring your kids to practice, instead of taking 20 minutes to drive home, sitting there and twiddling your thumbs for 30 minutes and then driving 20 minutes back or whatever it is, stay there, get your walk in, get some squats and get some push-ups in, get some pull-ups in, get some stairs in, whatever it is to be active. I loved that. I loved all the information about running and strength training with running and nutrition. It was all great. It was all great. Anything else that you wanted to share to finish, or?
I mean, I think the biggest thing I want to like leave people with is like there's so much joy to be had in movement, and just sometimes you just have to like try all the things until you find the one that resonates with you. Because I guarantee there's something, like whether it's more of like a best you type of fit where you're doing kind of a combination of aerobic and strengthening and you build community. But I do think that like a huge part of fitness being sustainable and enjoyable is the community that it offers you, and just the mental, like movement is meditation and movement is medicine. And I think there is so much that can be gained from just everything just seems a little bit less dramatic after I go for a run.
Yeah. No, 100%, 100%. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Well, this has been great. You guys need to make sure you share this episode with a friend or family member, whether they're a runner or not. If there's somebody who just, has a very chaotic life or a busy life or has 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, like send it to them. Hopefully they get a little nugget or two of how to more strategically prioritize some of these things for themselves. If you're listening on the Apple Podcast app or on Spotify, make sure you hit the follow button so you get notified of future episodes. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button down below as well. But Katie, that's all we got. That was an absolute joy, an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you coming on. That's all we got.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me. Have a great day.